Hi everyone, welcome back to the Pizzo Pod, and today we are going to be talking about the first event of first movie event of the July, I guess, releases. There was, like I've mentioned, Fantastic Four and Superman in the other videos. I just did a review on Superman. The first movie event of that month was Jurassic World Rebirth, and honestly, I'm a huge fan of Jurassic World. It is probably my favorite franchise in general, not just movie franchise. Um, so whether the movies are good or not, I will probably find some enjoyment in it. I'm a huge dinosaur fan, so I have a massive bias. A lot of the times, if they just do the bare minimum, I'll enjoy it. If the dinosaurs are accurate, if they're cool, if they have good scenes, I'll find some enjoyment in it. That being said, I am not completely blinded by my love for these movies. And I can tell you that there was definitely a downward spiral in quality since the original Jurassic World in 2015. Um, that movie was huge, obviously, when it came out. One of the biggest movies of all time at the time, and I do think that once that movie hit, they kind of weren't expecting it to be that big, and the second two movies aren't as good in quality. I do find a lot that I like about the movies. They'll always be with some of my favorite, but I know they're not the best movies in the world. Coming out of Dominion, I definitely agree that a soft relaunch of the franchise in terms of vision was needed. And that's what they did. They brought back David Kep. Obviously, he did a little bit of writing for Dominion, but he had his paws all over Rebirth. They hired Edwards, which I think were both hugely great decisions. Edwards has always had a great vision for his movies in terms of scale, and that really shines through in this movie. And David Kep is obviously a legendary um, movie writer, especially for his work on Jurassic Park. Going into the movie, I was really excited to see what Universal had been making, and I do think the movie hits in a lot of ways. The only worries I had when I was going in was that they're still introducing these like fictional hybrid monster type dinosaurs and not sticking to the actual animals. I was satisfied with the movie coming out, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. Jurassic World Rebirth really hones in on the survival aspect that some of the other Jurassic movies used, like Jurassic Park 3 and The Lost World. I could tell the creators wanted to complicate things less in comparison to a movie like Dominion that had so many moving parts and so many different plots. Um, Many of the set pieces in this movie are about one dinosaur or one creature that is attacking the main characters, and a lot of people have felt a little bit weird about this kind of way of building a movie, but I think it does work in the movie's favor in a lot of ways. It's laid out much more like a video game with various levels and bosses to get through. And like I said, a lot of people take issue with this, but I personally don't because it doesn't sacrifice character development or the quality of story, in my opinion. Every prehistoric creature in this movie is treated like an actual animal as well, which is something we haven't really seen since Jurassic Park and the Lost World. The Tyrannosaurus has an amazing scene where he's fully treated like an animal, and a lot of people complain that he moves super slow and kind of like they think it's kind of like a plot armor thing that he moves that way, but the scene is set up in a way that perfectly explains the situation and gives a perfect setup to it. The Rex has already eaten a Parasaurolophus, as they show at the beginning with the Dilophosaurus, and he's sleeping. And then once the scene kind of goes on, he drinks some water and he just notices the family. And he genuinely has this look of confusion, curiosity. And that kind of pushes him to follow them and follow them and follow them until those predator instincts kick in and he actually attacks them, which that seems much more realistic to what an animal would do who has already eaten rather than like just like immediately going after them. The only time it goes after the family is after the moment kind of hits its peak and those predator instincts kick in and he slams into the boat, and kind of then attacks more like aggressively. It's more of a cat with a toy rather than a monster trying to kill people or like. And I understand you want to treat them like predators, like animals or like monsters, because it looks better, it's cooler, but Doing it like this actually gives it much more like of that grounded feel, especially in that scene. I feel like the T-Rex feels so much like a real creature, like as it's following the boat. So, and I think that kind of that movie language or that's communicated through all these different types of scenes with the Quetzal and the Mosasaurus and the Spinosaurus. They're all treated like animals instead of just monsters. This movie stands with Jurassic Park, in my opinion, and as having some of the best character work we have seen in a Jurassic movie since the original. There are so many highlighted characters and so many moments to breathe and allow for the characters to explore their own perspective when it comes to the issues and the actual plot and their backstories. They're not just swept into the plot and they can't ever talk with other characters and like talk about their ideas and what they think about the situation. And I think that's really huge to adding to the story. Um, Duncan Kincaid, played by Mahershala Ali, is genuinely the best character in the Jurassic franchise since like Claire, I would say, in Jurassic World. His performance and his character brings so much weight and emotion, and it really grounds the story, in my opinion. His backstory with his child and his wife he is separated from is extremely tragic, and it is clear why he acts the way he does in the rest of the movie. You see these moments where he kind of gets angry with the Delgado family and how they went out unsafely in dangerous waters, and he kind of goes after the father, and it kind of is like you see that realistic kind of attitude that somebody who's lashing out against somebody else because they have their own regrets about certain things they've done in life. So I think moments like that are fantastic, and we need more of those in Jurassic. Um, Another character is Henry Loomis. He's much more of like a charismatic character who brings levity, comedy, and actually many times is able to be emblematic of the themes of the movie as he drives Scarlett Johansson's character Zora Bennett to change dramatically in terms of her thought process in the end. Henry is such a huge bright spot in the movie, and I really do hope we get to see him more going forward because I think he can add a lot to the franchise, a lot of that charisma that was so present in the original Jurassic Park with so many of the characters. Zora is another character in the movie, as I mentioned, played by Scarlett Johansson. She's able to show her vulnerability in many situations, and she's kind of more of a practical and adept character in many ways. But on the inside, emotionally, you can tell she's much more shaken by things that have happened in the previous events to the movie. I think she's less of a fully realized character, and I think Scarlett does play it a little too straight in some scenes, but she does, in a lot of ways, add a lot to the movie in terms of emotion because you have these moments like where she's on the boat by herself before they arrive to the island where she's just having a moment, and it kind of just it feels realistic. It's not they don't always have none of the characters in this movie are completely straight cool on the same wavelength the whole time. There's a lot of ups and downs emotionally. Martin Krebs is another member of the cast who's more or less meant to symbolize the worst aspects of humanity and kind of allow for other characters in the movie to have someone to bounce off of when it comes to their ideologies. Now, I do think his character could have been more nuanced. I think he's a little too mustache twirling type of villain, but I do think he does work in fleshing out other characters and giving them more of a chance to kind of show what they think and show kind of and they bounce off his kind of way off kilter point of view in terms of the fact that he's literally like a pharmaceutical CEO in comparison to them who actually care about the world and stuff like that, especially by the end. He's not the best character in the world, like I said, but he is important definitely to fleshing out other characters. Now, this movie's kind of set up in two ways where you have the main mission and the characters who are trying to retrieve the DNA, but then there's also another set of characters in the Delgado family alongside Teresa Delgado's boyfriend Xavier. They are much less realized. definitely not as good as our main cast. There is some development between Xavier and the father of the Delgados, Ruben, but it's not anything groundbreaking. It adds some heart, I will say, but the role of the Delgados is much less important to the story and only stands to add some tension and relatability to some scenes. All right, something that the previous Jurassic World movies set up a lot was obviously those fictional creatures, the Indominus Rex, the Indoraptor, and obviously in some of like the shows you have like the Scorpius Rex, the Spinoceratops, things like that. And this movie kind of continues on holding on to that idea, and this is probably my biggest pain point of the movie in terms of it's just the creatures are hit or miss. The D-Rex is really cool. Every scene that it's in is it does steal for sure. He has a lot of this huge presence, like this Godzilla-esque monster. It seems like in terms of the presence it brings into every scene. The opening scene to me has such a thick atmosphere and it really emphasizes the horror of facing the monster. And it really does truly feel like a failed experiment. The Indominus Rex and the Indoraptor seem very tailor-made like products, much less the Indoraptor than the Indominus Rex. But 100% the D-Rex is very, you can tell things went wrong. The Mutadons, on the other hand, which are the other mutants in this movie, are I honestly I honestly kind of despise them. Their designs are not my favorite, and they do add a little bit in terms of the idea that these dinosaurs, these animals, were too dangerous for the park, but their integration to the story is just so lacking. Their scene where Xavier goes to the bathroom is pretty cool because it shows like they're really dangerous and it is a pretty scary scene, but it kind of just serves to put down another creature in the franchise, the Velociraptor, which has a way better design. And there's a scene that comes out later in the movie with the gas station and the Mutadon attack, and I fully think that should have been the Velociraptors attacking. Have the D-Rex be its own thing. And this kind of goes into a bigger problem with the entire movie in terms of why are we making this the island where it's all the failed experiments and stuff. It's a cool idea on paper, but in execution, we've already seen all these types of like fake monster things, and the dinosaurs are much more interesting. And my biggest pain point with this movie is the hybrids and the mutants, but I will say this leads into a bigger conversation about the state of Jurassic and in terms of what Universal thinks about their own movie. They have thought on Jurassic World Dominion, and Jurassic World Dominion was successful, but it was not nearly as successful as the previous two. But their idea of what they think went wrong with that is that people just don't care about dinosaurs anymore, which is such a ludicrous thing to say. People are going to see these movies year by year, and there's so many scenes where they try to nail this idea into your head, and it just feels like a universal cope. Universal is trying to cope with the fact that their movies aren't as good in terms of writing, in terms of resonating with the audience, in terms of spectacle, and they just have to come up with an excuse in their mind that will allow them to make more movies and have the excuse already built in. What needs to happen is they need to bring on the same writers. I'm fine with David Koepp coming back and trying another shot because I do think his writing lacks in this movie. But if you give them plenty of time to flesh out a story, bring somebody in. If you want to bring Gareth in again, I understand, but maybe look for another director who fully loves the franchise and fully loves dinosaurs and will give us a movie that pushes the envelope, pushes the themes, and isn't just making an installment that feels like it is being made because they have to make it. So that's what I think this movie really falls flat, and it's not the biggest problem in the world. The movie still hits in a lot of ways, but I think that really is emblematic of all the problems of Jurassic post Jurassic World is a lack of meaning, a lack of having a set thing that they want to do and executing on that as to the best of their ability. But I do think this is a step in the right direction. I do think they can do better going forward. As a whole, honestly, like I said, I'm a huge Jurassic World fan, and I didn't come out having that many huge issues. The ones I mentioned are my big ones, and there's a lot of places you can nitpick. But in terms of the characterization, it's not the best. But I do think characters like Duncan are able to offset some of that kind of lack of characterization. This is not the best Jurassic movie. That is not what I'm trying to argue here, but it is a giant leap in the right direction. And I think if you, like I said, if you give David Kep and another director or Gareth the ability to continue making more installments or see how they do with the next installment, I do think there's a bright future with Jurassic. I was never someone personally who tried to claim that Jurassic should not be a franchise. I know that's a huge narrative that a lot of news sites and people try to run with, but honestly, we were losing the plot a little bit when it came to Fallen Kingdom and Dominion. I still enjoy those movies, but they could 100% do much better. One thing I am glad about is that this movie ends on the idea that its own isolated story, and kind of now they have to go back to the writer's room and build a whole new idea and story and elevate the franchise in a different way. Um, what is my idea for the future? I'm glad you asked because I have just the pitch for the next Jurassic movies. In the next Jurassic World, the world's atmosphere is slowly reverting back to prehistoric times. The planet is finally turning back the clock. Dinosaurs are becoming more and more plentiful as they thrive. Humanity is starting to panic as extinction within the next 20 to 30 years is imminent. Make this straight survival. Dinosaurs are the dominant species, with humans becoming less and less common, either being hunted or dying because of the changing world. The movies could start being a reminder that if we mess with nature and God too much, it will push back against us, just like the original Jurassic Park. We could have the full integration of the idea that God won't let us just do whatever we want. Playing God is a mistake, and this could be finally that turning point where things start to change. Humanity starts to die off. Henry Loomis has a great moment where he tells the other characters, "We don't rule the earth. We just think we do." And sure, we're changing the environment, but that makes us the ones to worry about, not the planet. When the earth gets tired of us, believe me, it will shake us off like a summer cold. This quote should be the blueprint for the future of the franchise, reminding humanity that we are not to play God. And I think if we go to that direction, the meaning and the importance of these movies are going to be much more important. Like I said, they will be at the forefront. We will have kind of a direction, and we'll go kind of the Planet of the Apes direction where things are, we're we've gone too far, and I think that can kind of definitely resonate with a lot of audiences because in some ways you could see the way we have been pushing technology and other things with how we are trying to actually create creatures that are prehistoric with AI, and that can be these movies can be an example and have a huge social impact because it shows what we do if we go too far, if we leave science and progression unchecked. So that's what I think we should do going forward. But of course, that's just me. I think everybody should have their own ideas, and these directors, they can bring their own vision, and there's other ways you can go through with this franchise 100%. That's just where I think it should go, and I think it would bring a lot of meaning and a lot of progression of the themes in the franchise.